Breaking news, 923,543 real estate agents didn't sell a single home in 2025. Right? That means roughly 1 million realtors who aren't making any money are walking around all last year. And the saddest part about it is most people leave their jobs, leave their careers, leave whatever it is that they're doing to get into real estate because of the no ceiling on their income, only to realize that there's also no basement. And a lot of these people, if they're not selling a home, they're actually losing money because you got to pay for board dues, you got to pay for MLS, you got to pay for your e-key, you got to pay all these different fees just to hold your real estate license, right? So most people are bleeding thousands of dollars every single year. Now, if you're one of the 923,543, or you're just not selling as much as you'd like, right? I'm going to reveal how your brokerage is keeping you poor, right? How your brokerage is keeping you trapped, right? Or they're keeping you overworked, right? And underpaid, right? So let me get into how I figured this all out. So 5 years ago, I got my real estate license 2 weeks after turning 20. Now, when I first got licensed, I used to attend every single class available, right? Now, I was part of Keller Williams, and I'm not knocking KW at all, but they had trainings pretty much from 9 to 3 every single day, Monday through Friday at my market center. Like, we had trainings galore. On top of that, we had occasional speakers come in. We had local vendor partners. We had so many different people come in. We had conferences. We had local tri-state events. Like, we had so much trainings offering at all time for agents. And me being at the time 20 years old, I had no real estate experience. I was just hungry. I was what you would call a spreadsheet millionaire, meaning on paper, I thought I was the richest person ever. The average price point in my area is 800,000. So I'm 20 years old. I'm doing the math. I'm like, all right, 800,000. I sell 3 homes. I'm making 6 figures a year. I'm still living with my grandparents at the time. Like, I'm thinking, I'm doing all the math after the couple $1,000s I need to spend for my license, all that stuff. I'm like, damn, I'm gonna be balling. And so I was super excited to get into real estate, but I didn't know this at the time, but all the people that would attend those classes, all those trainings, all the stuff were all the people who weren't producing. All the people who didn't either sell a house or weren't selling many houses consistently or were just part-time. I never really realized this until after I left real estate and I started becoming a trainer. So I got asked to teach my first class in February 2022, right? From then, I started doing more classes on social media. And eventually, in August of 2022, I signed up for my first public speaking course. It was a live, in-person, 4-week training, each week going over a different topic on becoming a public speaker. It was very intro-level training, but one of the important things I learned there was there's a difference between talking for talking's sake and talking to deliver a message that impacts, that inspires, that causes a shift in someone's belief, that transforms someone's identity, right? That makes them want to do more. There's a big difference between talking. And there's a lot of smooth talkers out there, right, that aren't impactful speakers. I learned that at that very first, and since then, I decided to go all in on becoming a better communicator, becoming a better public speaker, becoming a better trainer, a better presenter, because I want to make sure that when I'm talking, the highest and most valuable asset that you could ever give someone is either your time or your attention. And when I'm speaking, people are giving me both of those. And you'll never get your time or attention back. And so I got to make sure that when I'm presenting, that the value I'm delivering, right, is more valuable than the time and attention that they're trading off for that, a presentation. And so I started becoming a way better trainer and presenter. And then eventually I started being asked to teach at local real estate offices and brokerages, right, and local events and conferences. And here's the thing that I learned, right? When I started off my business, I was doing everything online. I was doing all my own classes and getting people to register for them. But then I started getting invited to speak. And here's what I learned. See, most brokerages are keeping you poor, but it's not intentional. It's an accident that most likely they're not even aware of. Most brokerages, what they'll do is they'll bring 3 types of speakers / presenters into your business. So I'm going to share my screen and share what these 3 speakers are, because if you're not aware of this, you're going to be signing up for training after training after training and wondering, hey, like, why am I not getting any results from this? So most of these people who aren't, producing, it's not because they're idiots, it's not because they're dumb or they lack the skill set required, or they're not consistent, right? It all really boils down to two things. It's a lack of clarity and a lack of execution. Those are the two things stopping these 923,543 agents from closing a deal, right? Clarity and execution. But it's hard to have clarity and to execute when you're bombarded with trainings, right? Most of these people are signing up for trainings from morning to afternoon. There's never any time to actually run your business and implement the stuff that you're learning, because you're constantly learning more, which is good until learning takes precedent over implementing and taking action, right? And doing what you got to do. So here are the 3 types of speakers that your brokerage most likely is hiring to train, right? Let's start off with number 1. We have F for freebies, right? We have the freebie. A lot of time, let's say your brokerage, they need a speaker on, let's say, AI. They'll look for any and everyone that can speak on AI that's not charging. That is their prerequisite. Will they come speak for free, right? If they'll speak for free, then they'll come bring them into the office, right? That is the first type of presenter that comes in. And the second type of presenter, right, is V for vendors, right? They'll say, hey, I want to do a lunch and learn, or hey, I want to do a workshop, or hey, I want to do a mix and mingle, right? And then they'll look to their vendor partners, and then they'll say, hey, who can sponsor this event? In exchange, we'll let you host a training, we'll let you give a pitch, we'll let you present in front of our agents, and you can talk about whatever you like to talk about, right? Or the vendor will reach out to the brokerage and say, hey, I would love to get in front of your agents. How could I do so? Can I pay for a lunch? How much would it cost? And so the vendor is paying to get in front of the agents. And the third type of presenter, right, is A for agents, right? Other successful real estate agent. Let's say you're a top producer in your office, usually like your team leader, your operating principal, whoever's running the office, will say, hey, so-and-so, you've been killing the game for a while. Could you come teach a class for everyone else and share them what's working for you, how do you get to where you're at? What's your story? What are some of the lessons you learned and things that you would avoid if you had to do it all over again, right? So these are the 3 types of speakers / presenters that most brokerages are bringing in to their office. Now, these 3 speakers all have the same core problem, right? They all have the same core problem. The same core problem begins with a C, communication. All these people most likely are very knowledgeable and very skilled in the industry and the trade that they're in. I'm not knocking their experience, their expertise, but communication in itself is a skill that you have to take a lot of time, energy, effort, repetitions, and with money, you name it. There's a lot that goes into becoming a better communicator. Most of these people, again, the people, anyone free, right? They're definitely not investing in themselves to become a good communicator. For the most part, they're definitely not, right? The paid vendors, most of these paid vendors, like the roofers, the contractors, the home inspectors, they're not taking public speaking courses. They're not taking how to be a presenter courses. They're not taking communications classes, right? Oh, these people are good at what they do, period. They're not a speaker. They're not a presenter. They're not a trainer, right? And then the successful agents, they just sell houses, right? And they may be a good communicator in like the sales, one-on-one sales, going to a listing appointment or buyer consult and converting them, right? They may be great communicator in that regard, but being a communicator in terms of like speaking on a stage or like delivering a keynote, that's a very different type of communication, right? Same principles apply, but the way it's applied looks very differently when you're on a one-on-one sales calls versus when you're talking one-to-many and you're teaching the class. And so a lot of these people use the success and credibility that they've gained in their own industry, and then they leverage that to get speaking engagements, right? And then from there, that's how most people that they're signing up for training, that's who their presenters are. Now, I want you to think about for a second, who are the world's greatest presenters, right? The world's greatest trainers. Some people that may come to mind are like Tony Robbins, maybe Mel Robbins. She's just launched a book recently. You have Les Brown, the Jim Rohns of the world. One of my favorite guys is Russell Brunson, Alex Hormozi. Another big one, Ed Milet, right? He's big. Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Tom Bilyeu. Like all these people who are super successful, very great communicators, right? Jesse is, there's another one that gets thrown around often. How many of them do you think would speak at their local real estate office for free? How many? Just take a guess. The likelihood is negative zero, like negative 10, negative 100, right? There's almost no chance on earth that they're just going to their local real estate offices and just speaking for free. The best speakers on the planet, the best communicators on the planet, right? They're charging premiums to go speak at these places, especially if it's like a real estate office, right? It's not like a local not-for-profit, you know, they're saving cats or something like that. No, they're speaking at a for-profit business center, business training office, whatever, right? They're highly unlikely that they'll ever do any of that stuff for free. And so when your brokerage is bringing in these people, right, to do these trainings, and these people aren't trained on how to train, they're just going to be giving you a bunch of information, and then you're left with notebooks filled with notes and nothing to actually implement, right? So this is something you have to be very careful for. Who is your presenter? What's their track record, right? And I don't mean track record in their field. I mean track record as in their speaking ability, in their speaking career, right? So now you know that the 3 types of speakers that brokerages usually bring in, and you know a little bit about communication, I'm going to go into the 4 levels of teaching. Because once you understand this, then you'll really understand why these 3 types, you know, the freebies, the vendors, and the agents, why these are probably the worst type of people to lead a training. So let's get into it. So I want you to look at this little ladder here. We're going to go one step at a time. So the first level of teaching is T for tactics. What are the tactics? The tactics are the what to do or the how to do, right? The step by step, right? Here are my 7 steps to hosting an open house. Here are the 15 steps to baking a chocolate chip cookie. Right? Here are the 6 steps to fixing your flat tire. When you're teaching tactics, you're teaching the exact step by step. Or here's how you record a video on social media. First things first, you're gonna download the Instagram app. Then you're gonna open up. Then you're gonna click this button on the bottom left or top right corner. And then click on that. Then you click the red button and hold it for 10 seconds. Like that is the tactics. Now, don't get me wrong. Tactics are important, but if someone's only giving you the tactics, you're gonna be filled with a ton of overwhelm. Right? You're going to be filled with, again, notebook filled with notes and nothing to actually implement. If you don't believe me, right, ask yourself, how many things that I know I need to be doing, that I know how to do, that I'm currently not doing? And if we're all being honest with ourselves, all of us have things that we know we need to do, we know how to do, and yet we're not doing them. So just knowing what to do isn't going to solve your problems. If you haven't been creating content, you've been struggling with social media, just by learning, here's how you record a video, or here's how you edit on CapCut, or here's how you, like that's not gonna solve the core issue, right? And the reason why tactics aren't valuable, especially in this age where everything's changing and evolving so rapidly, right? By the time you master the tactics, there's already new tactics. And if you're only learning tactics, this is where you get plagued with shiny object syndrome, right? Because everyone is going to tell you that their way is the best way. Everyone's going to tell you, hey, screw that, do this. Everyone's going to tell you, here's the #1 way to get XYZ result that you're looking for. There's too many talking heads. There's too many voices for you to sift through, which then add to the overwhelm, right? So tactics is the first level. Again, it's important, but this is the bottom level of teaching, right? So if you hear someone and they're speaking, a good litmus test to figure out, you know, whether or not they're a good speaker. And this doesn't work for all cases, but general rule of thumb, if someone leaves you with more overwhelm than clarity, most likely they were just teaching tactics, right? They were just teaching tactics. So now that we got the first level out the way, let's get right into level 2, right? Now, most trainers that aren't trained, right, get stuck at these 2 levels. So level 2 is strategies. Now, tactics are the what to do, strategies are the when and why to do it. So let's go back to, I said, let's say an open house, right? Here are my 7 steps to doing an open house. Right, first step, find a house that's just hit the market. Second step, you want to buy, 5 directional signs, right? 10 directional signs, right? Third step, go to the house 30 minutes early and you're going to put 5 on one side and 5 on the other side. Right, fourth step, right? You want to go live on yada, 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 right? Let's say right? You have the tactics down, you know how to do an open house, and then you actually go to do it, and you go to the open house from 1 to 3, and then at 3 o'clock, then you put the directional signs up, right? So you did the right step, you did the right steps, you did the right directions, but you did them out of order. So if no one showed up to your open house, is because open houses don't work, because you put the signs down after the open house finish, right? You're supposed to put the open house signs before the open house so people can drive by, see, hopefully stop, right, and go see the house. But if you don't do that, then the open house won't be as successful. Another great example of this is baking, right? Let's say you're baking cookies, right? And then you do everything right, and then you put the cookies in the oven for 15 minutes, take them out, and after you take them out, then you turn the oven on, right? So you did all the steps, but you forgot to turn on the oven to let it preheat prior to putting the cookies in. So now you still have cold cookie dough. You don't have actual baked cookies yet. So you can know all the tactics, but if you're not doing it at the right time, you will forever be losing out on your results. You'll never get the results you're looking for. Another great example, we just had the Super Bowl last week, running the ball, right? There is a famous Super Bowl play when the Seattle Seahawks were on the 1 yard line. I forget who they were playing. I think it was the Broncos or the Patriots or something. I forget who they were playing. But the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl a few years back. They were at the Super Bowl, and the game is on the line. They're at the 1 yard line. They have one of the most powerful running backs, right, in the NFL at that time. And instead of running the ball up the middle, they call a passing play, right, and it gets intercepted, game over, Seahawks lost, right? And that passing play was probably a good play. They probably succeeded with it. That's why they called it with the game on the line. But they had the wrong strategy. They were trying to pass on a 1 yard line where they should have ran it and gave it to Marshawn Lynch, right? Right tactics, wrong strategy, now they don't have a Super Bowl ring. So it's super important that when you're getting the tactics that you know when to do it, because if you're doing it at the wrong time, it'll still never work. But again, this is just level 2. So strategies are a little bit better than tactics. But again, this is the differentiator between most speakers and the best of the best. See, the best of the best, they're teaching at this third level here, right? This third level here is P for principles. Principles. Now, tactics are the what to do. The strategies are the when and why to do it, right? The principles are how it all works. See, most people know what to do, but they don't know how any of the things they're doing actually work. So they're just following directions, right? And here's why this is so important. Because tactics, like I mentioned earlier, change so much. Strategies shift depending on the market sometimes. But principles remain true, right? Principles remain true. And here's something about principles. I want you to write this down for those of you who are writing down, all right? The principle of universality, right? Or the law of universality, right? It pretty much states that in order for a principle to be considered a true principle, it has to be true in that specific scenario and in all others. So for example, law of gravity. If I were to jump down a flight of stairs here, obviously, I'm in Connecticut. If I jump down, I'm going to hit the ground. If I were to go to Australia and jump down a flight of stairs, it's expected that I'm also going to hit the bottom of the stairs. If I go to Antarctica and jump down a flight of stairs, it's expected that I'm going to hit the bottom of the stairs. Why? Because the law of gravity remains true. It doesn't matter where I am or how I feel, right? If I'm angry if I jump down a flight of stairs versus if I'm happy, if I jump off the flight of stairs, I'm going to hit the bottom of the stairs. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter where I'm at. The law of gravity remains true. And this is why it's so important to understand the principles, because when you understand the principles, tactics will change, strategies will change, but principles remain true no matter what. Principles stand the test of time. So if you can understand the principles of whatever it is that you want to do, you'll be able to succeed despite any changes that may come your way, or in spite of any changes that may come your way. Let me give you another example of this. A lot of people, when it comes to social media, they're trying to understand the algorithm. They're trying to figure out what's the best trend. They're trying to figure out, oh, how long should my video be, or what should I write in the captions? They're trying to figure out all the tactics. But here's what's more important than the algorithm, right? The audience. Why? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if we're making a video, if we're making a podcast, or we're sending a mailer, or if we're door knocking, the people that we're trying to reach at the end of the day is going to be people. And people been peopling since the start of people, right? People have remained pretty much exactly the same since the start of time. There's nothing new under the sun, right? Human nature is human nature. And if you work with human nature, it'll work for you. And if you work against human nature, it'll be your greatest enemy, right? And so when you stop trying to figure out social media and the little tips and tricks and tactics and hacks, right? And you start understanding human psychology and human nature, marketing becomes so much easier, regardless of the medium that you're trying to focus on. This is why principles is so important, because principles dictate how the game is played, right? The players change, but the game remains the same. And so it's super important to know principles. Most of the time, these communicators right here, the freebies, the vendors, and the agents, they're not even aware of this. They just think that if I give you all the information, then that's me doing a great job for you. Right? Great speakers not only distill the information to its simplest form and easiest to grasp form, but they also make it simple and easy to understand how you can implement that information, how you could take that information and use it for yourself. Why? Because they're teaching at a higher level of value, right? They're teaching the principles, not just the tactics and the strategies. But here's the craziest part, right? This isn't even the highest level yet. The best of the best speakers in the world, right? They're teaching at this 4th level here. This is E for essence. I didn't learn this until a few months ago from the time I'm recording this. I remember the first time I probably seen this live. It was 2022 in June. I went to Austin, Texas. I got to spend a day with a billionaire, right? And I remember just listening to him speak, and I've never seen someone just exude so much confidence. It's like none of the stuff that he was teaching and presenting, and he went for 8 hours that day, not a single piece of it felt like it was off of recall. And not a single piece of it felt like it was him searching, digging through his memories. Mind you, the guy is like 70 something, right? Not a single bit of it felt like, he was trying to remember the right thing to say or the right cue or the right story for this. It's like everything that came out of his mouth it was just him. It was just like he's spitting out his genetic makeup. It was so strange. And fast forward 4 years later, 3 years later, when I finally learned about this, I'm like, yo, that is essence. That's when the message becomes the messenger, right? That's why people always say a prepared messenger is always going to be better than a prepared message. And so like when you are teaching essence, you are pretty much embodying the message itself. You and the message are one and the same. You're kind of like in this flow state of speaking. You're not trying to remember what are the right words. You're just spitting out, in its purest form, right? This kind of like flow state of speaking, like I mentioned. So if I'm being fully transparent, I'm not there yet really with my material. I'm trying to do a better job of understanding my material so deep that I can only teach from principles and essence. Like once I get there, like there's a long way to go, but once I get there, there's going to be a mental shift in the way I present. I'm working on it now, but these are the things that if you don't understand this, you'll keep signing up for trainings and wondering, why am I overwhelmed? Why am I still not doing the things that I know I need to be doing? It's because you're stuck here. Now, if you have no understanding, if you're a brand new beginner, it doesn't matter what the topic is, it could be social media, AI, it could be cooking, it could be working out, right? I highly recommend that you go to trainings where they're teaching the principles and the essence of how that thing works, right? Because once you understand that, then you can learn the tactics and it'll make sense. If you're a brand new beginner and someone's gonna try and teach you, how to start generating business from YouTube or whatever from scratch, right? They're probably gonna go over the tactics, whatever, right? You're gonna be so overwhelmed by the end of that training that you won't do anything with any of the information. Versus if you sign up for a training and it says like, here are the fundamentals of YouTube, right? Okay. Once you master the fundamentals, then you'll be able to graduate to the hyper-specific training. Versus, right, let's say you're a YouTube master, right? You can sign up for trainings on principle and essence, but you can also sign up for trainings here that are teaching tactics and strategies. And you'll be able to apply these tactics because you'll understand how it works. So again, if you have a higher level of mastery in the subject, right, sign up for classes that, fit whatever you're looking for. It could be tactics, it could be other principles, right? But if you have a lower level of mastery, you want to start off by learning the principles and the essence, right? Once you understand how the game works, then you can start applying the tactics to you, right? The gold isn't in the things that people are sharing. The gold is in what you can take away from what the people are sharing. Once you figure out how you could take what someone's sharing and apply it to your business, that's where you'll find all the gold. So that being said, as I wrap everything up, this is super important to know. Stop signing up for trainings at your brokerage from people who haven't been paid to speak, or people who are brand new to speaking, or people who have never practiced communicating. I'll leave you with a quick story. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses like 24 to 27. Right? Paul was writing to the people of Corinth, and he was talking about, you know, when you run a race, right, run it to win, and yada, yada, yada. And the reason he was talking about racing and using that metaphor in that passage was because in that time period that Paul was writing that book, right, there was something called the Isthmian Games, right? And Isthmia, Isthmia, was a city about 10 miles roughly from the city of Corinth, right? And every 2 years they would come here. This is one of the 4 large, like, major Greek festivals, and they would meet once every 2 years. And everyone who wanted to compete in the games had to compete. They had to swear an oath. They had to go under strict training, be on a strict diet, right? They had to abstain from love and wine excessively. Right? They had to do so much just to compete. And they had to do that starting 10 months prior. Leading up to the event, they had to practice in front of judges in the gymnasium prior to the actual festival starting, right? Now, these judges, they had to train for 10 months rigorously on the rules of the game, right? They had to train on the rules of the game. So before they just started judging, right? It's not like they were a successful former athlete and then they just started judging. No, the judges themselves had to train on how to judge. So before you sign up for any other training, ask yourself, is this presenter, have they spent time working on their craft of presenting? Because if not, you're gonna get a bunch of tactics, you're gonna be overwhelmed, you're gonna be confused, and you're not gonna implement any of the stuff. That being said, hope you found a lot of value in this training, right? Make sure you don't sign up for trainings. Don't get in that loophole of signing up for training after training after training, and make sure you start implementing and audit the people that you're learning from. Because if not, again, you'll just be stuck forever. See you in the next video.